What is up, guys? My name is Ben Hartwell. Thanks for checking out the channel. If it's your first time here, or even if it's not, please consider smashing that subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. So, you guys have been asking a ton of questions since the last Q&A I did just a few weeks ago, so I figured let's just get another one done. So no messing about this week. I'm going to try and get through as many questions as I possibly can. I do want to say thank you for asking all these questions. I love getting all these questions from you guys, and I hope that you're enjoying these videos and the answers that I'm providing are useful. So if you see your name on the screen now, your question is getting answered in this video. Let's get straight into it. Neo TDV1821 asks, what brand of electric guitar strings are you playing? And that's from my How to Get the Sweet Child of Mine tone. So the strings in that video are these. These are Sfarzo SFT Screamers. I really like these strings. They have been on the majority of my guitars for about 5 years now. I find that they're really good when using modelers like the Helix. They just seem to push the modeler a little bit harder, and you seem to get a bit more sustain out of them. They are really great strings. I can't recommend them highly enough. Go check out the Sfarzo website. Bailey Weiss 3297. I do apologize if I'm getting any of these names wrong. They say the harmonics are dead on, trial and error and where to pick on the string. That's from my Wanted Dead or Alive Sunday solo. Yeah, harmonics can be a bit of a trial and error kind of situation. Once you've kind of got the technique down, it is just a bit of experimentation on where to get the harmonic that you're after by picking on different areas of the string. I do find that they are harder to reproduce when you're using modelers and in this kind of recording environment where you haven't got a real amp giving you that feedback and getting the interaction between the guitar and the amp. But yeah, it is just a bit of trial and error really, and finding the spot on the guitar where the harmonic jumps out in the way that you want it to, and it's the right note that you need for the part that you're trying to perform. So with that Wanted Dead or Alive solo, I did get some decent harmonics, but I don't think they were quite what Richie Sambora was getting. But the way he would have recorded that back in the 80s would have been a much different situation to the way that I recorded it here in this studio. So I just had to work with what I could get out of the guitar and the setup that I was using at the time. Mick McKay 2716 says, are those Dirty Finger Zebras? That's from the Hotel California Sunday solo. So he's asking about this guitar here. This is Eddie, my 2009 Les Paul Traditional Pro, and he's asking about these pickups. These are actually just the standard classic 57 pickups that come stock in this guitar. In fact, the entire guitar is stock. I haven't changed a single thing on this guitar. I love the way this thing sounds. It's just a little bit on the heavy side for me when it comes to playing it live, so I can only manage 3 or 4 songs and then I want to take it off and switch back to something a bit lighter. But it sounds fantastic. It's that classic rock sound that you think of when you think of a Les Paul. Ranjith5279 asks, how many years of practice? I think I started playing guitar around the ages of 7 or 8, something like that, after my cousin got a 3/4 size acoustic and he hated it, so I got it as a hand-me-down. So that'd be what, 30 plus something years of guitar playing? A long time. Colin930 says, how do you like the Silver Sky? I absolutely love that Silver Sky guitar. I don't have it with me here in the studio at the moment. It's still at home from gigging, but what a great guitar. And for the money, I don't think you're gonna find a better S-type guitar. I haven't had a chance to play one of the full American versions yet. I only have the SE, but it's an absolutely great sounding guitar. Mine does need a bit of a setup doing, as it started to get a little bit of a buzz and the action's quite high on it, so I just need to give it a bit of a setup. But the neck on that thing is just incredible. I love unfinished necks like that, and it's just got the right kind of thickness to it that I think a Strat neck should have. Overall, I'd just say it is a great guitar, not just a great guitar for the money, but a great guitar full stop. I'm gigging it regularly every week and it's just standing up to everything that I throw at it. They are really great guitars. I would highly recommend getting down to a guitar shop and trying one for yourself. JJ Cohen says, sounds great. Thanks, man. Question, how did you record it? Direct? I'm trying to learn how to make nice guitar videos like yours, and that's from the Knocking on Heaven's Door Sunday solo. So I think I just went direct out of the HX Stomp into my X6 and into Luna and did most of the work in Luna. Let's jump into the computer and I'll check what I actually did. Okay, so in Luna, and this is the project file for Knocking on Heaven's Door Sunday Solo that I did, fairly straightforward-ish tone for this one. I basically used my Sweet Child of Mine patch, which you can find on my website in the description below, tweaked it a little bit and removed a couple of blocks so that it would work in the HX Stomp, recorded that direct out of the HX Stomp into my X6 interface and into Luna. And then all I really did is a little bit of EQ just to shape the tone a little bit, get rid of some of the lows and some of these mid frequencies that weren't really needed. And then a little bit of compression with an 1176, a little bit of tape saturation with the A800, and that was pretty much it for that tone. So the guitar tone itself is built around the JCM 800 amp in the Helix, which is the 2203. And if you want to see a bit more in depth about how I actually built that tone, you can check it out here in the cards. And that's pretty much it. That's all I did for that tone. Finders says, nailed it. Thanks, dude. What effects you got on this? That's from the Stockholm Syndrome Muse Sunday Solo that I did. Now with these Sunday Solos, I end up doing a load of post-processing in Luna to actually get the tone as close as I can to the tone on the record. So let's jump back into the computer and let's see what I did. Okay, so back in the computer, and this is the working file for Stockholm Syndrome by Muse for the Sunday Solo that I did. Pretty cool tone this, and the way that I did it was to record direct into the X6. That comes direct onto this guitar track here, and all I'm doing on the actual track itself is a bit of compression with a distressor. That then feeds this stereo guitar track so that I can work in stereo with some stereo delay effects, and I'm using Helix Native. So this is the Helix Native patch that's doing all of the work really to get the tone for this track. So you can see it is a somewhat complicated patch and there's quite a few things going on. So it's based on 2 amps and the 2 different lines of audio. On the top line, the amp is the DAS Benzin Lead, and on the bottom line, it's the DAS Benzin Mega. Both amps set slightly different. The one on the bottom has got more drive than the one on the top, and they're both using 2 different IRs. The bottom has got the Friedman 412, and the top has got a 1960A hand-wired, both by 3 Sigma Audio. So the first thing that it hits in the patch after that compressor is the wah pedal, which is automated to follow along with the track. That then goes along to this split where it's sensed to both lanes of audio. On the top lane, I've got the pocket fuzz. I went through every single fuzz that Helix has to try and get something as close as I could to what Matt Bellamy seems to be using on the record, and this is the one that got me the closest. And on the second line of audio, I've got it coming down to a simple pitch, which is knocked down a whole octave and just blended in a little bit to help beef up the riff. Now as the solo plays on the actual record, you hear quite a few different guitar tones used. I wanted to try and get it all done in one take, so the way that I did that was with a bunch of automation. So I've got the wah automated to follow along, but I've also got this Pro Q3 that gets kicked in towards the middle of the track. So if I hit play, you can see that I've got it automated for that EQ to turn on and for that notch to move down. And that's pretty much all I had to do to get the tones that I was after. Most of it is done by Helix Native, a little bit of compression before and some EQ moves afterwards, and all that automation is what really helps sell the guitar part. Ilbetter asks one question: when the guitar is plugged in and the pedal board is off, do you still hear the sound of the instrument? That's from my HX Stomp versus a JVM video. So I don't know there if you're asking about the pedal board that's plugged into the JVM or if you're asking about the HX Stomp itself, so I'll answer both. So if you're plugged into HX Stomp and you turn it off, I believe that you'll get absolutely no sound at all output through the HX Stomp. When you're plugged into a regular pedal board using traditional stomp boxes going into the front of a tube amp and you turn all those pedals off, you should still get sound going into the front of that amp. There are some pedals that do require power going to them at all times, otherwise you won't get any sound. But on the whole, you can turn all those pedals off and even remove the power from some of them, and you should still get sound to the front of the amp. The HX Stomp is different with it being a digital processing unit. It does need power to output any kind of sound. This isn't really a question, but it's something that gets mentioned a lot on my videos, so I just wanted to address it here. Logan Stapp says, you should be posting the patches on Custom Tone or somewhere. Now, the reason that I don't post the patches that I make for my Sunday solos on Custom Tone is that I'm usually not doing a whole lot of processing in the Helix itself. I'm doing all of the processing and all the heavy lifting of making the tone in the DAW after I've recorded it. So if I was to post tones that come in from the Helix on Custom Tone, you would basically just be getting the amp tone. and it wouldn't sound anything like the tone that I actually end up putting in the video. The majority of the time, all I'm actually doing in the Helix is dialing up a bit of an amp tone, maybe a pedal here or there, but there's not really a whole lot going on. It's all happening in the DAW afterwards, where I'm doing tons of EQing, usually a load of compression, reverbs, delays, whatever it is that I need to get it to sound like the record. All that's done after the fact. So that's why I don't put the tones on custom tone. Robert Peeble says, very good, cheers dude. He asks, which software please? That's from the Stairway Sunday Solo. So as far as software goes for the Stairway to Heaven solo, it's the same as all the other Sunday solos that I do. It was just a combination of Luna for the DAW, then HX Native if I needed that for any of the extra effects. I think I might have used Zilla Cabs from GGD there for the IR simulation, and then it's just all the other UAD effects and some EQ from Pro Q3, just to shape the tone and try and get it as close as possible to the one on the record. Mike Taylor 1311 asks, how do you set your amp for live? And he also asks, are they good for live shows? Asking about the Helix there, and they are both from the Stairway to Heaven video. So if I'm using a real tube amp live, I tend to use channel switching amps. So at the moment, the amp that I do use live when I'm playing with my band is my Soldano clone. You can check the video on the build of that here. And the way that I've traditionally set amps up live is to have one clean channel and one dirty channel. Now the SLO is a little bit different because I really like the normal channel on that with the gain cranked. So I'm kind of using that channel as a more traditional sounding gain channel. And then I've got the overdrive channel with a real dirty sound on there. And then if and when I need a clean sound, I'm just dialing back my volume on the guitar to help clean up that normal channel. And then that gives me a sound that kind of reads as clean, or as clean as I usually need to be anyway during a gig. Then I'm using my bigger pedal board in 4-cable method that's got a bunch of different gain stages, both compression and overdrive. And I'm just using whatever it is that I feel I need at the time for whatever song it is that we're performing. And with that setup, I can pretty much get any tone that I need. Anything from pretty clean, I can't really do super sparkly clean tones with that setup. Maybe I need dedicated clean amp for that. But I can do clean-ish tones all the way through classic gain, all the way up to super high gain stuff. The second question where you're asking if Helix is good for live shows, yeah, Helix is great for live shows. I've gigged one consistently since 2016 when they first came out. After a few years, I moved to a Helix only solution where I was feeding Helix to front of house and my monitoring situation as well. And it's been great. I think the tone from Helix is really good. The feel's good. It does take some getting used to, but I've been in the modeling world now for so long that I've just become used to the way that it works and the way that it feels. The reliability's been great. They're built really well and they take the abuse of the road. On the whole, I think Helix is a great solution live. It can adapt pretty much whatever you want to do with it. So if you just want a Helix, you could just have the Helix. If you want to add in other bits of hardware and other pedals, you can do that. If you want it to be the control center for a much bigger rig with real amps and stuff behind you, it can do that. It's a really great bit of hardware. Walter Reddick 65 says, do you have the SE or American? Not sure at my place in life the American is justifiable. He's asking there about the Silver Sky, and that's from the Comfortably Numb Sunday Solo. Yeah, I just have the SE version. I was kind of in the same boat. I was just after a decent Strat, but I didn't want to drop the kind of money that the American ones are demanding at the moment. And the SE version is such an affordable guitar. And at the time that I got it around Christmas, it was discounted even further. So it made it a really attractive buy. And as I said previously in this video, it's such a good guitar that really I don't feel that I'm missing out by not having the American version. Jamie Crowther 443 says, great job, thanks man, and asks, what is the guitar? And that's from the Bohemian Rhapsody Sunday Solo. So the guitar that I used for that solo is this. This is my Yamaha SGV 300. I did a whole video on this guitar. I'll link it up here in the cards. I think it's from 2000 or 2001. It's actually a really great sounding guitar. It's a little bit unusual because I believe it has ceramic pickups and it has this blend switch where you can blend between the pickups. Just a really interesting and I think really cool looking retro styled guitar. And it's the one that I could get the closest sound to Brian May's guitar when I was trying to record the Bohemian Rhapsody solo. Charles Murfeld 2988 asks, which version of Tubescreamer? And that's from the Helix versus pedal video. So Tubescreamer is this one here. So this is a 90s Tubescreamer, I believe. This isn't even my Tubescreamer. This is a friend of mine's that's on extended loan. It's a TS9. It doesn't actually work very well at the moment. I think there's something wrong with the power socket. I'm gonna have to open it up and see what's actually going on in there. But that's about as much as I know about it. It's a 90s TS9. Juicebox268 asks, what tuning is this? An awesome playing. Thanks, man. And that's from the Stockholm Syndrome Muse Sunday Solo. Nothing too complicated going on with the tuning in that solo. It's just in drop D. Ruddy Can Fail 1 says, do musicians, according to the contract, have to do something else besides playing? And that's from my 5 tips for cruise musicians. So yeah, it is written into contract quite often that you will have extra duties whilst on board ship. I've been quite fortunate in all the contracts that I've done in not having extra duties, but there will usually be things like taking part in drill or helping out with other bits of entertainment, things like that. You'll also sometimes have to take part in something called import manning, which basically just means staying on board the ship, as the ship has to have a certain number of people on board when it's in port. And so every so often it will fall to musicians to be part of that number of people that has to stay on board. But the extra duties thing does seem to be changing a little bit. I have an upcoming cruise contract, which I can't talk about just yet, but that has no extra duties on it. I'm actually going on as guest status. And it does seem like more and more cruise companies are trying to do that to make the position more enticing for musicians. So it's just a case of reading your contract and seeing what's actually expected of you. Sometimes you will have extra duties and sometimes you won't. Strike76 says, hi, thanks for the info. Can you share which videos you've made that is mixed with the Calis? That's from my Cali LP6 second wave video. Yeah, that's really easy. Everything since that video has been mixed with the Cali LP6 second waves. Giorgio3816 says, hi, amazing tone you have. Just wanted to know, how do you approach recording your guitar? And that's from the Hotel California Sunday Solo. Thanks, dude. So it's pretty straightforward the way that I approach recording the guitar for those Sunday solos. I just do a bit of research and find out what was actually used on the real guitar recording. If I've got something that's pretty close, like if it was a Les Paul, I use my Les Paul. If I need a more modern sound, it might be the Sir. If it's a Strat, I might grab the Silver Sky. Then I just pick a piece of gear depending on what kind of mood I'm in. So it might be the Helix, it might be a real amp or a piece of software, and dial in the amp model or the real amp to get as close to what was actually used on the record. So if it's a Marshall Plexi sound, I'll dial in a Marshall Plexi. If it's a Fender Clean, I'll dial in some kind of Fender sound. Then I get the part nailed down, then I do a recording, film it and get a good performance take. Then once it's in the DAW, I do all the post-processing to get it as close to the record as I can. So all the EQ moves, all the compression, reverbs, delays, any kind of special effects there might be. Then just a bit of mixing to get it to sit nicely with the track, going back and forth with the real track to try and get it as close as possible. And that's basically it. Emmanuel Fernandez 6307 asks, what effects do you use to get that tone? And that's from the Crazy Sunday Solo by Aerosmith. So for that solo I used my Silver Sky, and I think it was the HX Stomp that I used for that. But let's jump back into the computer and I'll check what I actually did to get the tone. So we're in Luna, and this is the project file for Crazy by Aerosmith that I did for my Sunday Solo. Quite an interesting tone, this one. The way that I actually went about getting it was I used the HX Stomp on one of the Plexi models. That fed into the effects return of my Victory V30. So it's kind of like using the HX Stomp as a preamp, feeding the power section of the V30. That then went into my Sir reactive load, and I actually used one of the IRs that's built into the reactive load. That went into the X6 and I recorded it direct into Luna, and then I did a bunch of processing on the guitar track, as you can see here. So I started with the distressor just to kind of even out the levels and to bump up the volume a little bit. I went into Helix Native to do some delay and reverb, just using the tape delay and a bit of the dynamic hall. I used the SS channel strip to do some tone shaping. You can see I did some EQ and some more compression. Then I used Capital Chambers because I still wasn't getting enough reverb. That then went into FabFilter Pro Q3, and you can see I'm doing a massive notch at 557 Hertz, cutting a load of low end and a load of top end. And I'm finishing it off with an LA2A just to help level it all out and bring up some of those dynamics. One of the cool things you can do on a per channel basis in Luna is the tape saturation. So you can see here I've got a Studer A800 on this channel, just help add in a little bit more harmonic content to that guitar. And that's it, a little bit of master processing just to help glue everything together. But that's everything that I used for the Aerosmith Crazy guitar tone. And the last question for today's video comes from, however you say that name. 4 cable method makes a different sound. yeah, you will get a different sound using 4-cable method, sometimes quite a drastic different sound, depending on the kind of effects that you're putting in front of the amp and the effects that you're putting in the loop of the amp. For example, if you put some time-based effects, delays, modulations, reverbs into the front of a dirty amp, you will get a completely different result than you would from putting them into the loop of the amp. As a general rule, it's best to put things like compression, distortion, overdrive into the front of an amp, letting it hit the preamp of that amplifier, and anything time-based, modulations, delays, reverbs into the loop of the amp, so you get a cleaner signal from those effects into the power section of the amplifier. As with a lot of things in music and guitar, there are no real hard and fast rules. It is all open to interpretation and experimentation. So the best kind of advice is to try things in different positions in front and in the loop and see what it is that you actually like. So there you go, guys. I've tried to answer your questions as best I can. I hope I've given you the answers that you were after, and I hope this has been useful to some of you other guys who might have been wanting to ask similar questions. Keep the questions coming either here or on my Instagram channel, and I'll try and answer as many as possible in future videos. If you want to watch another video on my channel, you can do it just up here. And don't forget to subscribe, you can do it right there. I'll see you in the next one.